Have any of you wondered why so many Democrat politicians were claiming to be skeptical of the new COVID vaccines? Of course, the first part of it was about the election. They wanted to make it seem like you can't trust the process because Trump was involved. Because if people thought he was competent in getting this achieved, he would have easily been reelected. If Operation Warp Speed, which has seen a vaccine created in record time, was viewed as successful before the election, well, that wouldn't have been good for Joe Biden and the Democrats. The other side of it is that Democrats don't really want this crisis to go away, at least not too fast. COVID has created an opportunity for them to change the world, and that's what they intend to do. A vaccine will make this opportunity go away, and they don't want that. They don't want to go back to trying to scare everyone about climate change. They haven't had all that much success with instilling enough fear over climate change that would be willing to give up our freedoms. But they have been pretty successful with this pandemic. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, has recently let the cat out of the bag.
This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
I've talked about the Great Reset on this channel a while back. And that's why they're happy that COVID-19 has given them the opportunity to take us further left. Here's what the World Economic Forum says about this opportunity. Quote, "As we enter a unique window of opportunity to shape the recovery, this initiative will offer insights to help inform all those determining the future state of global relations, the direction of national economies, the priorities of societies, the nature of business models, and the management of global commons. Drawing from the vision and vast expertise of the leaders engaged across the forum's communities, the Great Reset Initiative has a set of dimensions to build a new social contract that honors the dignity of every human being. If Biden's the president next year, this vaccine won't make COVID go away. Democrats are not going to let this opportunity vanish. Plus, if the vaccine would work, they'd have to give credit to Trump, and they're not going to do that. Democrats are going to drag this out as long as possible. I mean, that's what they've been doing this whole time anyway. Herd immunity happens when enough people have a disease that it's not easily transmitted anymore. Experts think it's around 70% of the population when it comes to COVID-19. According to the CDC, 92% of the people who have died with COVID are 55 years old or older. And guess what? Americans who are 55 years old or older make up almost 30% of the population. You see, what we should have done from the beginning was protect the vulnerable and let this virus run its course. Instead, we had lockdowns that have slowed down the spread of the disease, making it much longer to reach herd immunity and putting the vulnerable in a much longer period of risk. Not to mention so many Democrat governors doing the opposite of protecting the vulnerable and sending COVID-positive patients into nursing homes. Plus all of the other problems that come with destroying one of the greatest economies we've ever had. The Stanford School of Medicine has done the biggest antibodies test on the novel coronavirus that included 28,000 people, and they found that 9% of the population have already had COVID-19. That's around 30 million people. That's about 3 times the amount of people who have been confirmed to have had it. And as we've talked about before on this channel, they're counting anyone that had the virus at the time of their death as being a COVID death. So we know the 250,000 deaths they attribute to the Chinese flu aren't all because of the pandemic. I'll let the director of the Illinois Department of Public Health explain the criteria to you.
The case definition is very simplistic. It means at the time of death, it was a COVID positive diagnosis. So that means that if you were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted as a COVID death. It means that even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death. So everyone who's listed as a COVID death doesn't mean that was the cause of the death, but they had COVID at the time of death. I hope that's helpful.
So even if we use the CDC's numbers, the survival rate for people under the age of 55 is above 99.8%. That means that we should have protected vulnerable Americans and stuck to business as usual for everyone else. We should have let this virus do its thing. Herd immunity would have been achieved and perhaps less people would have died. Some of you might have noticed that I was gone for almost 2 weeks at the beginning of October. I had to fly back to Kentucky for a funeral. My father had passed away. He was 75 years old and had many health issues. He was overweight, he had diabetes, he was a cancer survivor, and had previously suffered 2 heart attacks. On October 2nd, a couple hours after I had video chatted with him, he sat on the porch, fell asleep, and died peacefully. 2 hours after that, they swabbed him for a COVID test, and later we found out that he was COVID positive at the time of his death. Is his death among the 250,000 they tell us have died with COVID? One would have to assume so. Here's the thing, though. My dad wasn't limiting his interactions with people. None of my family in Kentucky were socially distancing. And since then, no one has had any COVID symptoms. Not my mom, who lived in the same house. Not his brother or sister, who were around him almost every day and, as my aunt would say, loving on him. When I was there, the vast majority of my family didn't practice any kind of social distancing or wear a mask. In fact, a bunch of us went to a restaurant and they wanted us to wear masks to enter the place, and my cousins decided to go somewhere else. That was a deal breaker for them. And now it's a month and a half later, and no one has been sick with COVID-19. I'm not saying that there isn't a disease called COVID-19 and that it's not making some people sick. It is. But most of the people who've died were already sick. And that's a fact. And our elected officials who are making these outrageously oppressive rules know it. That's why people like our governor here in California, Gavin Newsom, doesn't follow his own rules. That was Newsom at a birthday party, not socially distancing or wearing a mask, having dinner with a group of people larger than his guidelines allow. He later apologized for it, but it's only because he got caught. So why is it that so many of our political leaders are breaking their own COVID rules? Are they not scared of getting this dangerous disease? Former Obama Chief of Staff and Mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, famously said, quote, "You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. I mean, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before," unquote. That's what this is. Democrats and leftists around the world see this as an opportunity, and the decisions they're making have nothing to do with the welfare of the people. It's about how bad they can make this crisis. The bigger the crisis, the bigger the opportunity. So what incentive would they have to rectify the situation? Don't think for a moment that Democrats and their leftist supporters want COVID-19 to go away. They don't. In fact, they've done everything they can to make this crisis as bad as possible. And that's the simple truth. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and if you want to become a supporting member of Blue Collar Logic, click on the link in the description and give what you can.